This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent, but this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first, because your service deserves unwavering support.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Silent War Within. As you guys know, I have been absent due to some medical things. I actually got an infection inside my spinal column, and it did not go as planned at all. I was just talking to these guys about some of the things that I had to do and go through, so it has not been a good time, but I'm so happy to be back here and be back with our newest teammate here, Jason. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, brother. I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, I am too. I'm excited to be here. I've been working kind of in the background on all the computer stuff, and we've updated our website, and we've added Jason, of course, to our lineup. So he's part of our Silent War Within team now. And today we have a very special guest, Jason Bohler. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are y'all?
We are fantastic. As I said, I'm just happy to be back. I'm happy to be back in the chair and on the mic, so I might talk a little bit more than usual today. Jason has kind of been the voice of, he and Michaela have been holding down the chairs and been the voice of A Silent War Within, and I have enjoyed editing those episodes. They've been doing such a great job. So we always start off, we want to give you the mic and kind of let you tell us about a little bit about your story and where you come from and how you got here and why you said yes to a mental health podcast.
Okay. Well, my name's Jason Bohler. Again, I'm from Podunk, Southeast Arkansas, a town called Hamburg. Its big claim to fame is Scottie Pippen of the Chicago Bulls is from Hamburg, Arkansas, and not much else. And how I got here was just struggling with my own mental health at being a veteran of both the United States Army and the United States Coast Guard, and also being in education and seeing it with young people and going through my own struggles through midlife, particularly over the last 10 years or so, and dealing with that in the unhealthiest of ways. When I finally decided to pull myself out of a rut and did what I call the 365-day rebellion against midlife mediocrity, if you will, I decided that maybe I'm not so unique or there's nothing special about me. So maybe start a podcast and other men in particular may feel more comfortable acknowledging their mental health struggles so that we can try to correct this ship, because it is a big problem across the board at this point in the country. So I just wanted to do my part to be another voice to say that it's okay to put yourself out there and get help if you need to get help.
That's awesome. So on paper, your service, and you talked about it a little bit, is kind of really, really diverse. Like you've been kind of all over the place. You have done the search and rescue thing. You've patrolled the streets of Baghdad in your time in service during a conflict time. And before we talk about all those uniforms, tell us kind of what led you into some of those positions and talk more about your service, both in the Coast Guard and the Army, right?
Yes, that's correct. So I am super confusing to the VA because of my moving around. You know, that dealing with them sometimes, trying to explain it to them, but I'll do my best. So I got in the National Guard first, Army National Guard, at 17. 3 years into that contract, I transferred to active duty Coast Guard. And then after I was free and clear from all of it, post 9/11, I got back in the Arkansas Army National Guard, which led to the tour of Iraq, and for various reasons. But as far as to the point of how I got to there to begin with, I would say is a combination of three things. Number one is I knew what I didn't want to do because I grew up in a mill town. My mom worked at the paper mill. She did days, evenings, and graveyards. I had to hone my ninja skills just to go in the kitchen and get lunch because she would be sleeping, you know, and I knew I didn't want to do that. It put food on our family's table. I've got nothing but respect for those people, but I can't do mundane factory stuff. Then I had several friends around my age, very small town, we all know each other, who were joining the National Guard. And I thought, well, I mean, it seems safe enough. All these guys are doing it, right? And then lastly, I would say I grew up in the 80s. It was Rocky 4, it was Rambo. I spent most of my time, if I was lucky enough to be at a neighbor's pool, I was doing some sort of mission at the bottom of the pool, defusing a bomb, or I was out in the woods fighting Russians, and it just appealed to me. I've always considered myself a patriot and wanted to know if I had what it took. And after that initial time at 17 of going through boot camp and proving to myself I could do it, I thought, well, this is something I'm interested in, serving and being part of something bigger than myself. And it's just kind of led me down this path of doing that from then on. So
Gotcha. Well, that's awesome. Now, part of I guess you were kind of a 911 operator for the river. Tell us a little bit about that, because I'm very interested to hear what a 911 operator for the river actually is and does.
yeah. So as you know, the Coast Guard is not very prominent in our area.
Hmm.
How I got into the Coast Guard was just a weird thing. I was looking to go active duty, and I landed on the Coast Guard. I didn't want the same thing. So Marines and Army was out. I was about to get married. Being on a boat for 6 months at a time was out. So no Navy. Looked at the Air Force. They weren't taking prior service. And I started looking into this Coast Guard thing, and it looked really cool. So I joined the Coast Guard. The first year I was on a cutter called the Courageous out of Panama City, Florida, and we were doing active search and rescue in the Gulf. Well, after I went to telecommunications school, they sent me to Memphis. And you're correct. What is a river 911 operator? Well, that's what a Coast Guard person does, particularly when they're stationed somewhere where there's not a big Coast Guard search and rescue presence. The only boats we have on the Mississippi and Arkansas rivers are buoy tenders, buoy boats, and we don't really have search and rescue. Now, the sheriff's departments up and down the rivers on either side have their own search and rescue. So, my job would be to take the call and then coordinate search and rescue from my communications room with various law enforcement agencies and whoever else on the river got my message that I sent out, for help, that was in the area and wanted to help. So I was more of a coordinator of those things amongst many parties, depending on what mile on the river something were to happen. And so
I
that's why I
got you.
say basically 911 op.
Yeah, right. No, that's a excellent description of what you just told us. But I guess so this was before the deployment, right?
Yes,
I mean, is
yes.
that timeline correct? Do you feel like that level? I'm curious to know if that level of coordination and that level of kind of high stakes kind of prepared you for the deployment, or was the deployment something completely new and out of nowhere for you?
I would say it did prepare me. By then I was 20 years old and I had a chief, Chief Bill Garner, great leader from North Mississippi as well. And he instilled a lot of confidence in me and trusted me because after you go through the training, you're on 12-hour shifts by yourself. And as you know, emergencies don't happen one at a time and wrap them up in a pretty little bow. And then the next one happens. They generally happen in succession, all at, 5 of them in a row. And actually, we used to play a joke. We'd pull the folders out, lay them across the desk where the person were leaving us and make that person think they were walking into a storm that day. And we'd be like, no, it's quiet today. And we'd put the files back up. But sometimes it would be legit. A lot of things would be going on. And so to be able to manage that and prioritize the biggest need at that time based on what the biggest threat was or the biggest safety concern was, because it wasn't always people in the water. Sometimes it would be a barge run adrift, which is sounds like no big deal till it hits a bridge, right? So you need to catch that thing. And so just being able to learn over that 3-year period how to prioritize emergencies and shift focus to what needs to happen right then uh, gave me a wealth of confidence. So when I went to Iraq, I wasn't really under a lot of stress, but it's different when you're actually there.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
So It's not like I had all the answers when I went to Iraq, but I do think that the Coast Guard experience helped prepare me for that.
What was your I'm curious, as you transitioned from 3 years in the Coast Guard into, was it active duty Army, or was it National Guard? I'm sorry.
It was National Guard after a little break.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you transferred, and transitioned into that, and then you're deployed into Iraq. Um, I'm curious what your role was. Like, what was your primary mission in Iraq? What was your service?
Well, I was part of the 39th Infantry Brigade. So we were infantry, and our job was to patrol our area to keep it safe for the citizens of Iraq. And it just so happened that before we left, they had their first free elections in like 30 years. And so we were able to witness that. So sometime at that point, we were protecting polling booths from attack and just showing a presence in our neighborhood. And sometimes that looked like handing out soccer balls to kids or food or help building infrastructure or guarding those that are in the army that know how to actually build stuff, right? Providing convoy transport for high value people so that they could go to these meetings and figure out what they needed to do. Roadblocks, checking vehicles randomly. That's probably the scariest thing because there's miles of cars and you don't know what's in the trunk until you open it, right? So a little bit of everything. Sometimes we would go and detain people that we thought might be bad guys, and that would require 2 a.m. in the morning type operation, very coordinated amongst other platoons, other companies. Sometimes we'd cordon off an entire neighborhood of 30, 40,000 people and go door to door and check the whole neighborhood. So it's just whatever they needed us to do. When they say grunt, they mean it. Like you just do whatever they need you to do. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. So now transitioning out of that combat zone back into civilian life, what does that look like for you? What were the struggles? What were the wins? What were the lessons that you learned from?
Well, the struggle for me personally, I can't speak for everyone else, but when they talk about PTSD, I don't know that it always sets in based on what you've experienced over there or in a traumatic situation. I think sometimes it doesn't hit you until you realize that you're back home, and back home is not necessarily what you thought it was before or what it should be. Over there, it's just so simple. Everyone's got the same uniform and everyone's looking out for each other. And it doesn't matter what your background is, how much money you had going into it or where you came from or any of that. We're all the same people trying to get home to our families. And it's almost this idealistic, kind of naive way of looking at what the country should be. And then you get home and it's just, all the bickering and division and stuff like that is what sets it off for me. Cause it's like, man, I know it can be better than this because I've seen it. I've seen the best of us do that. And so that's what kind of gets to me mentally, I think. But then there are plenty of soldiers that have PTSD from the actual events of being over there. I've been hit by IEDs and things like that, but time kind of heals those things for a lot of us, I think. And it's just talking about it. And as far as what it did for me, I mean, it doesn't hurt to get a job if if you're a combat veteran. It's pretty easy to get an interview at least. So it's not like I didn't get anything out of it. But just having the respect of people to at least give you a chance when you walk into a room, and they know your backstory. They at least know, well, this guy's probably an okay guy. He's at least willing to sacrifice. And so, I appreciate that. And I appreciate people thanking us, although it makes me feel really awkward when that happens. But I would say I just got a little more confidence. What I got in the Coast Guard combined with that just give me confidence to go and do things that I want to do.
That's awesome. So talk about that confidence as it relates to coaching high school athletes, like, and that balance of the nervous system coming off high alert. Just walk us through that.
Man, I tell you, one of my favorite things that I've ever done is was coach. And it's for several reasons. Number one, you get that brotherhood thing I talked about a little bit in Iraq. That's the same thing with the coaching world. Coaches, the only thing I don't like about the brotherhood of coaching is they all think you should play golf, and I hate golf. So,
I
I
do
would
too.
go, but it's not my thing. And so, but yeah, it's the brotherhood of coaching, those long hours you're spending with coaches after the kids have gone home when you're doing laundry and stuff like that. And some of the funniest things you've ever heard in your life go on in the locker room. But the kids too, who are not kids at this point, they're all grown men, and I'm friends with a lot of them on like social media and stuff and keep up with them. One of the most rewarding few years of my life, honestly. And I was a little high strung. Coming from Iraq to dealing with middle school kids, it's difficult, but they liked me. Thank God that they actually liked me because I have a sense of humor, maybe a little closer to their age, honestly. But we had a good time, man. I would just say that I needed that. That's exactly what I needed to do when I got home, was to be around those people, and they'll always be special to me. But at some point, I had to test myself and move up. So out of coaching, I went and into administration, which is not as fun, but it pays.
Sorry,
So,
coach.
I mean, you kind of touched on it. Like it feels like that change into coaching sounds like maybe a self-preservation model, as hey, let's go find something that's fun as a new way to connect and engage with the members of my community. And I love how you describe that. Like I don't know that I ever would have considered that necessarily a brotherhood, but you're right. It's just a different unit. It's a different squad, right?
It really is. It really is. And yeah, you're right. It's the first eye opener I had as far as what service can look like. That doesn't require you necessarily to be in super dangerous situations. You're still serving the community when you're dealing with young men who don't have relationships with their fathers, and all of a sudden, you're feeling like you're influencing them in a positive way. You're still serving, and so like I say, it just meant the world to me. It'd always be one of the most favorite parts of my life is those. And we didn't win very many ball games. I'll just say we had a good group come through right towards the end. Is when I say good, I love all of them, but we had a solidly talented group come through towards the end, and we got to experience some winning. But early on, there wasn't a lot of winning. It was more about just being there for each other through some pretty terrible losses. So
Yeah, but you know what? I played sports in high school, and I've played on both sides of that. So we had absolutely horrible teams my freshman and sophomore year, and something happened. I can't even remember what it was that shifted either the mentality, or we started getting talent from other schools. People started moving to our area pretty heavy. But I've been on both sides of that. So junior and senior year, we went to the North Half State Championship game, which we lost, but that was our only loss of the entire season. So I played on both sides of that, and I can tell you that from an athlete's, and I don't look like an athlete now by any means. This is what happened when an athlete gets to 40 and enjoys all the fast food in the EMS world. But I can tell you from a former athlete, some of the most influential people in my lives were my coaches, especially during that time. And that's a very special place to hold. So I guess I want to shift into a little bit, like, you have all these wins throughout your life, and you have these cool things that you've done. And I think you said it on the very first episode of your podcast, all the cool stuff happened before 40.
yeah,
And so tell us about how your podcast, taking on middle ages, and really attacking that that thought process of all the good life is gone. It's kind of what I gained from some of the first couple episodes that I listened to
yeah.
was, everything's in the rearview mirror. What now? So kind of get into how that affected you and what actually led to you going, hey, I think I'm going to talk about this on a platform.
Yeah. So That's true. Most of my exciting experiences anyway did happen very early on, and I guess when you come out with a bang like that to start with, it's hard to live up to that all the time. So we had moved to a new town. My son had graduated, and what I do now is mostly online, so I'm not around those kids anymore, and I felt kinda lonely. Working from home primarily is a lonely endeavor. Everybody thinks they wanna work in their pajamas until they actually have to do it, and there's quite an adjustment to be made there, and so I say always, since I've been an adult, I've enjoyed an adult beverage from time to time, but over the last 10 years, it had gotten to be a severe crutch for me. It was become my unhealthy way of dealing with the fact that I was feeling stagnant. I didn't feel like I was making any progress anywhere. From the outside, yeah, I looked fine. I had a good job, decent house, all that good stuff. But on the inside, I was dealing with some things that with the wrong attitude. And so I committed myself that the goal was when I turn 50, I want to feel better and look better than I had my entire 40s. So, in order to do that, I had to identify what was holding me back. Alcohol was the number one thing because so goes my alcohol consumption, so goes my will to want to exercise, so goes my will to want to get back in touch with my spirituality, if you will. Everything. It affected everything. So I had to attack that part first. And so I said, well, I won't drink anything for 365 days. Let's see what happens. Well, about 2 months into that, I thought, I feel pretty good. Maybe I should start exercising. And so I did. And I ended up losing about 40 pounds. Didn't drink for a year. Still don't drink very often at all. Just don't need it. It's just not a thing for me anymore. And I thought, well, again, I'm not very unique, but I know a lot of people that might could learn something from what I've gone through, and that is if you identify what I do a strength audit, what I call is a strength audit. You identify your weaknesses or your bad habits that are holding you back. Give yourself credit for the good ones. Okay. You take your bad ones and you identify the biggest ones and you attack those full just with everything you got. You try to get rid of those habits and replace them with good ones. And I read stuff like James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. There's so many good books out there that kind of motivate you along the way. But, and then I thought, well, why not do a podcast about this and talk about, the middle age rut and some of these bad habits and what I've done to overcome them. And not just me, let me bring other people in and talk about leadership and being the best version of yourself and what being a good man looks like. And so it just started snowballing and now that's what I do. When I'm not working, I'm doing my podcast, talking about those sorts of things because it changed my life for the better so much. Just to
Well,
take that
I,
year.
I really like this because I'm in the presence of two, how can I put this? Aged guys, very veterans, if you will. So I'm reaching that midlife, probably for me, midlife. I'm 38 years old, about to be 40. So I'm looking, as my daughter told me a little bit ago before I came in here, she said, Dad, you're looking down the barrel of 40. I was like, dude, be quiet. I don't want to hear that. Um, but like, what do you say to guys like me who kind of like you? The first part of my life will go down in history as like that was the Big Bang. Like that was all the cool stuff happened back there. What do you say to the guy who's turning 40 and goes, "What now?"
Seek and you shall find.
Yep.
Find some challenges.
Yeah.
Create some challenges, whatever it is. I mean, I picked up the guitar. I'm not any good, but at least picked up something that keeps me challenged. Anything you can do to continue to challenge yourself and look forward to getting better at will keep you from being stagnant. And that's the worst thing to be is just doing nothing, just being stagnant. And I've heard from guys in their late 20s that are listening to the podcast and they're like, I'm glad I'm hearing this now. So maybe I don't get in that trap, but just always have something to look forward to, some way to challenge yourself, you know, and I look at every day of life almost like a video game. It's like, what do I have to do to conquer today? What can I do
Got to
today that
level
would
up.
make it interesting? You know?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's a good analogy. I love that video game analogy. And it's a reminder that growing up in the 80s, I don't know how video games are nowadays, but what got you past level one of Pac-Man or Mario Brothers didn't work in level two. It didn't work in level three. You always continually had to be seeking new ways to grow and new ways to learn new things in the video game world. And it's the same way in life. Like in order to level up and get to the next stage in life, we got to continually be open to learning and to challenge. It's good stuff.
And I think that's what I like so much, Jason, about your podcast is that there's a piece of it that really hits on like this transition can be mentally heavy. This transition can be a little tough and a little rugged sometimes. And I think you talked about it a little bit, and you kind of experienced it. You went from a coach and uh, still a veteran, but you went from a coach, veteran, guy that had done all these things, and you had to walk through this season of life that kind of is that transitional moment. Did that have a season of mental toll as you went through that? Did that cause some kind of a seasonal depression or things that you had to work through to get past it and say, hey, I need to pick up something I need to constantly pursue? For me, what that looks like is I'm always hunting for the table where I can sit down where I'm not the smartest guy there. If I'm the smartest guy at that table, I'm sitting at the wrong table.
Yeah.
I want people I can pull from. That's what I love so much about this podcast is I have so many people that I've spoken with that I just can pull so much from and so much experience. So talk about some of the mental toll as you kind of walk through that transitional time that made you get to this idea of, hey, we're going to talk about this on a platform.
Man, I couldn't even tell you all the negative thoughts that were floating around in
I
my
bet.
head. Just, almost like Eeyore off, Winnie the Pooh. It had gotten that bad. Like, what's the point? Why do this? Why do that? Like, the only thing I'd look forward to in an entire year would be our yearly vacation, which would be what, 2 weeks out of a year that I would look forward to? I mean, you can't live like that, that's too long in between things that you should be looking forward to, and really, one of the things that really jumped me off out of that was I was already thinking about doing that year, 365-day challenge, and my mom passed away, like, 2 weeks before I was supposed to start, and so I thought, I can either end up like her with a lot of regrets, and I'm not saying she had regrets. I'm saying end up eventually get to her age and have health issues and look back and have a lot of regrets and thinking, what if? Or I could just say the heck with it and start seeing what works and seeing what don't and challenging myself. It was a fight for sure within. You call it a silent war within. It was
Yep.
a silent war, all right, for sure, because it was, do I really need to do? And sometimes we worry about what other people are going to say. But I don't know why, because most people couldn't care less what we're doing. If we're being truthful about it, they're too busy worried about themselves, right? So if we fail, we think the whole world's watching, and they're really not. So you have to get over these things. But man, I couldn't even begin to tell you what all was going on in my head. It wasn't good stuff, and a lot of it was lack of gratitude too. I think it really started to turn around when instead of looking at what I didn't have or what I wasn't doing, I started focusing on what I do have. I've got a wonderful wife. I've got 2 great kids. I work with some amazing people, even though it's not a super exciting job compared to what I've done before. I live in a relatively peaceful neighborhood. The list goes on. And I think if you start saying, what do I have that's good in my life? And what's worth fighting for to be here longer so that I can appreciate all this stuff, then it comes real easy and clear to you. It's not easy to actually go through the changes, but it's easy to understand why you should, if that
I
makes
think
sense.
that's such a powerful piece of advice. one of the things that I've learned about myself, especially over the last few years, is that I inherently can let myself get into a negative headspace. And many times it takes consciously going, what do I have? What can I be thankful for? And even in the midst of what people would view as some of the darkest times, you find things that are so precious to you that you're so thankful for. And it completely changes the outlook of the entire situation.
Absolutely.
And it really does. And I start every day with that kind of gratitude now because I've seen it work so many times, especially over the past few years, knowing this about myself and going to counseling and finding out that, hey, you do struggle with negativity. You can be kind of a butthole most days. And if you get into that mentality all the time, you're just going to be awful to be around. But starting out with gratitude has changed so much. So that's such excellent advice. Jason, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just had
No,
that final word.
I was just gonna say, you have to know too that, you have to know that the deck is stacked against us as far as negativity goes. It's not just going on within our brain in some natural human way. That's gonna happen, but there's also a ton of negativity from the outside that if you let inside, it doesn't help you. And so
Mhm.
another thing I did was I quit watching the news. I quit doom scrolling.
Yeah.
I mean, all those things can bleed into your brain and just
Yeah.
rot it, you know?
Mhm.
So
Well, social media, there's it's a two-edged sword, right? So social media can be a great place to connect with your friends. I think that, and I've said this on numerous podcasts, I think that social media is our next big communication revolution. It kind of is becoming that way. Whether you're on board for it or not is your choice. But certainly you can see that people are communicating, connecting more through social media now more than ever. And we could sit here and have hours and hours long discussions about how that's bad. Both of us were, I mean, all of us here were raised in a different era where we actually knew how to physically talk to people. And youth today just don't know that. But the other side of that sword is that, social media can be used as such a comparison model. And you get into this headspace of, oh, everybody else's life is perfect and mine is just not. And nobody shares all the bad stuff that's going on in their life in social media. You can paint the picture you want of your family and your work and whatever you want to put on social media. You can control that. And I think even I have gotten into that mentality of look at what all these other people have and look at what I don't. When in reality, they have either less than I do or they don't have as much to be grateful for and they're just not showing that side of life. So I think that it really is a double-edged sword that can really cut some folks down if they allow it to.
for sure. It's
Yeah, I agree. I think sitting there listening to you talk through I always think of it's like the Sunday school answer to have an attitude of gratitude, right?
Right, yeah.
And I want to go one level deeper than that for just a second and speak to the individual who's listening to this podcast or watching this wherever you're at right now, who's really having a hard time finding something to be grateful for. Because I've been in that stage of my life where it took it took an act of God for me to see one thing that I could be grateful for. So this is my free coaching tip for that individual that's watching today. When you're in that place and you can't find one thing or whatever to get out of that negative headspace, the best way out of that headspace is to be present in the room. And what that means is just look around the room and start naming the things that you see out loud. Say them in to speak them into life. I see a light switch. I see a light. I see a faucet. I see a bottle of bourbon. I see, whatever it is I see. And then just name the things in the room because you can't think about two different things at the same time. You can't be in a negative or positive headspace and be consciously, cognitively thinking and naming the things that are in the room. So that's step one to get out of that negative headspace. And as you're looking around, now you're seeing some of the things that you can be grateful for, if
that's
that
awesome.
helps. So just a thought.
Yeah, I kinda
I
do
love that.
similar with anxiety attacks,
Mm-hmm.
where you start looking at stuff, but you're, like, hitting a double whammy there. I like it because not
Yeah.
only are you identifying stuff, you're like, "There's a toaster, and I'm glad I have one because I
Yes.
like toast." So,
Yes.
you're hitting them
Exactly.
both. That's good.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's pivot that back to you, Jason. If you're talking directly right now to a veteran or a frontline responder who feels completely just isolated and kind of stuck in that midlife drift, what's a step one protocol that you would use to help them regain control of their mind and ultimately their life, get them back on track?
Say to reach out to like people in the same situation because when you find out you're not alone, that makes everything easier. I spent so much time thinking something was different and unique about me. I was special. I'm not. I interviewed Sergeant Major Lance Nutt, Marine Corps retiree. He's got this organization. It's a nonprofit called Sheepdog Impact Assistance, and their whole thing is get off the couch. It's getting back control of your life by serving others. So he gets veterans out off the couch, gets them with other veterans, actually going out and serving others. And his whole thing is your second mountain. We spent a lot of time looking back at our first mountain, boot camp, Iraq, Coast Guard, all that. And we waste the opportunity to find and climb our second mountain. So your second mountain is the second part of your life where you're out there serving others, and that helps heal you by healing others, basically. And so, I interviewed him a couple months ago, and I absolutely agree with that assessment. If you can find like-minded people that are dealing with maybe some of the same things you are, same experiences, talk to them about it and find a way to go out and help someone else, you'll realize a couple things. Number one, you're still valuable. You still have something that society needs, the ability to serve. And number two, you may not have it as bad as the people you're serving, and that gratitude may show up a little bit there. So
Mhm.
I just think you can't be afraid to talk about it. Can't be afraid to reach out to people because we're everywhere, right? And no veteran for sure is going to turn down another veteran that wants to talk about something like that, any kind of issues going on. But you have to first be brave enough to do it. You just have
Yeah.
to try.
Yeah. I love that mission of finding purpose and helping other people. It's why in every single one of my videos with "Have a blessed day, go be the blessing." Because if you want to receive the blessing, there's no better way to receive the blessing than to give it. Like it's like giving a Christmas gift to your kids. Like when you give the gift away to somebody, it's like just warms. Like now as an adult, I don't need anything. I just want to sit there and watch my kids enjoy the day. Um, so it's good. I love that. So I know you because of your history in the service, your history with coaching young athletes, leading a school. I know you understand structure is important. What's what's a daily non-negotiable mental or physical routine that you practice to ensure that you're living an uncommon and extraordinary life instead of just going through the motions?
I get up early, I exercise, and I read. So exercise could be a lift day. It could just be a walk. I think walking, just the act of walking around the neighborhood a mile or two or three at just a normal pace is so good for not only you physically over time, but also mentally. It helps kind of clear the clutter, if you will, and start your day off the right way. So I get up early and I get that out of the way, and then I read either an excerpt from the Daily Stoic or something like that to kind of help me get my mind right about what matters and what don't. That's all about not worrying about things you can't control is essentially all stoicism is. And I'm not a hardcore stoic, but just a page a day, something to kind of just help me get started. And then there are things that I don't do as far as structure. I don't ever wake up in the morning and look at my phone first thing, particularly social media or anything that could be negative, because you don't want to start your day that way, right? If you're going to check it later after you've started your day the right way. But as far as structure goes, yeah, I go to bed about 8:30 at night. I get up about 4 something. I do my exercise. I know then that I've at least stayed true to what I want to do. If everything else goes haywire the rest of the day, I've at least taken care of that. And so it makes every day better for me.
That's good. And I love that I've landed in a very similar place over the last year of just understanding that exercise at 50 plus years old, I'm not doing the heavy lift days. I'm not throwing weights like I was in my 20s, 30s, or even in my 40s, right? Like it's functional fitness, and certainly as a first responder, that's that's important for everybody that's out there. It's just, hey, what can I do to move? And that's the other step for me that I've found has been successful in getting out of that mental trash, that negative self-talk. It's be present in the room and then just get up and move. The first time I tried that was just to get up and move was literally like, hey, I'm just gonna go down the steps and open up the garage door and stand there for a minute. And next thing I knew, I found myself walking up and down the street, or
Yeah,
taking my socks off and shoes off and just standing in the grass and connecting myself back to creation and earth and God's creation and the movement. That's important. I mean, you touched on it. It's not just a physical activity, it's a mental activity. I love it.
absolutely. And you're talking about touching grass. That is excellent. I should have mentioned that one too, because man,
Yeah.
I mentioned going on vacations once a year. We don't do like condos in New York City. We go to the mountains. We find river streams. We go somewhere where I can touch grass, and that's my little heaven on earth is places like that. It helps get me right. And I think Forrest Gump was onto something when he just took off running. Yeah, he really was.
He was. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I can tell you some of the things that, and I don't know your religious background, but, I believe that in every season, God's trying to teach us something. And one of the things that once, this injury happened for me, and then all the follow up, one of the things that I've been taught in the last couple weeks is how much I really took for granted. Like having to learn how to walk correctly again has been something that's like, wow, I didn't realize how much I took walking for granted. And would go on daily walks. Many times I've been on the roof of our hospital daily, and you can trek around the entire outside of our hospital all on the roof, which in Memphis is a good thing because you don't really want to be strolling around the Memphis streets at sometimes that I'm at work. But there's so much that I'm learning that I took for granted. Watching my 5-year-old that just peeked in the door a minute ago. I don't know if you guys saw him, but he just peeked in the door to see if dad was done yet.
We saw it. I loved it. I was waiting for his little head to peek around the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah, he peeked around the corner and shut the door. But watching him just discover the world and being present for that in a way that I would not have been if I was not injured. So little things that you just take for granted. When you guys were talking about walking, I was sitting here comically in my head going, yeah, I'm glad you guys can walk. That's great. I walked 3 laps around the, PT today and I was tired. But there's just so much that we take for granted for. And if you shift your mindset and you start thinking about some of those little things like touching grass and being outside and the way the sky looks and, all those little bitty things that when you're injured and kind of not getting to experience those things, I can remember the first day I came home, I sat on my back porch for I know 3 or 4 hours just smelling the air. And it was such a strange feeling to go, I just love the way this air smells because I hadn't had fresh air in 15 days. So it's just those little things that you guys have kind of talked about and shifting your focus and your mindset. But as we start to kind of wrap up, what what are some non-negotiables for you in your own mental health? What is things that you do to take care of yourself and to make sure that your mind is right?
Well, I have to be present enough to see problems coming before they get too bad. So I'm always thinking about what could send me down a hole. that I don't want to be in. Again, if there's a major thing going on the news and people are all arguing about it, I avoid that like the freaking plague. I will not touch it with a 10-foot pole. I'm not. If I know if I do skip a workout, if I skip two, I'm in trouble. So I don't skip two. It's just you constantly have to be doing maintenance on your own life, preventive maintenance on your own life, and kind of stay ahead of any potential problems so that they, even if they do hit, they're never as bad as what they could have been had you not seen them coming. So it's being very mindful and present of my surroundings and my situation and knowing, okay, there are days, especially like in January and February, I have like seasonal affective disorder. I've not been diagnosed, but I always get depressed in January and February. I can't stand it when the leaves are gone and and it looks like an Edgar Allan Poe poem come to life
Mm.
out of my window.
Mhm.
I'm not a big
Yeah.
fan, and
Yeah, me either.
so even like when I watch TV in January and February, I purposely choose the most lighthearted comedies I can watch, or something that takes place, a movie that takes place on a beach or somewhere sunny. Like I trick my mind. I'm constantly trying to trick my mind into not allowing myself to go down a dark hole, and it's a full time job. But the minute you let your guard down, if you're prone to anxiety, depression, stuff like that, you could be messing up. And so,
Yeah.
so yeah, you just got to stay on top of it. Non-negotiable for me is staying on top of it, trying to see it coming before it gets out of control.
So tell us where we can listen to your podcast. Tell us about your social media channels. This is my favorite part of the show because I absolutely love a good shameless plug.
Well, tomapodcast.com will get you the links to anything that you want to get to as far as I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and then Toma Podcasts on Facebook if you want to see my reels and follow me on there. Also on Instagram and TikTok. And so you'll see my ugly mug on any of those. If there happens to be another Toma out there, I'm the one with this face.
Unforgettable for sure. No
Yeah.
worries. We will find you now.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I love that Jason and Michaela have started this trend that I was not doing before, but I absolutely love it when I'm listening to, doing the editing part of it. Do you have any questions for us?
Well, I actually spoke with you, Kevin, a few minutes before we went live. I didn't know that you guys had been doing this for about a month longer than me because you seem to
Yep.
do it better. So,
I
but
don't know about that.
yeah,
I'm only about 3 weeks in, so you're literally like my third or
from a
fourth, so.
Yeah.
from podcaster to podcaster, what has been the biggest surprise for you all as you've started this podcast?
So I will definitely take that question because, and I told you this, but I'll tell our listeners, probably 5 months ago, I was to the point of like, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't deal with it because one of the things that Jason Bohler and I talked about was the fact that when you start a podcast and you manage the social media, you do all the things that is involved in a podcast, it kind of becomes a second full-time job, which I was completely not expecting. This was a passion project. I was going to interview some of my favorite people that I watch constantly on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Reels, all that stuff. And I was going to see if they had dealt with any of the same mental health struggles that I had. And most people that listen to this show know my story and know that I had kind of a 2017, between 17 and 20, had kind of a come apart and had to seek professional help for it because of a really negative experience I had on a call and a patient that did not go the way that I wanted it to. So I was just really coming on to tell my story and to get other people's input on kind of what was going on and seeing if they had dealt with similar things. And after the first couple guests, I started to realize, oh, I'm just like you said, I'm not alone. This is not an island of isolation. This is everybody that's in this first responder healthcare community. So we really kind of niched into that area and said, we're gonna interview all these people that have these similar experiences. But when it became a full-time job, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just overrun with things to do. And I was laying in my bed one night and was off and on kind of sleeping and had this dream about Angel that does our social media stuff. And something in that dream told me, you need to contact Angel. And the next morning, woke up, that was a Friday night, Saturday morning, woke up, called her immediately and was like, hey, had not talked to her in probably 4 or 5 years. We used to work at the same ambulance station. And she's been a fan of the show since it started. She's very active in that. And she said immediately, without any hesitation, absolutely, I would love to help. And, you know, just like you and I talked about, we make no money. This is a passion project, maybe one day, but none of us ever started this to be rich and famous. And that was the biggest surprise, that this was a full-time job, and Angel coming on was just like a godsend. And she literally can be credited for saving a Silent War Within and keeping it going, because by myself, I was at my wit's end. But once I gathered a team together and continued to grow the team, it just gets easier and easier with each member that we add, because it gives me a break. So I would say to you, don't overload yourself with those task things that just naturally come with doing a podcast. Sometimes you have to reach out for help, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think also talking to a therapist I think I go every 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember. But just having somebody to talk to, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a best friend, whether it's a confidant, and just telling them about what's going on in your life makes a huge difference, because it just takes the weight off your chest a little bit. And it feels like somebody's on the roller coaster ride with you, and you don't feel as overwhelmed by it sometimes.
Right. Because they are. We're all on that roller coaster
Mhm.
in some capacity. So,
Yeah. And you just learn that there's so many people on your side. There's so many people rooting for you that you didn't even realize.
True
for
story.
sure.
You know, Jason and I, back in, I think, somewhere between 10 and 13, somewhere in those years, worked on a Facebook group together. And I didn't even realize that was a note from Dad until I reached out to him to be a guest. And then we made the connection. So, I mean, there's people rooting for you all over the place, even if you don't see them or you don't talk to them every day. Don't think, and I would also say, don't get wrapped up in the numbers. Many times podcasters get very wrapped up in how many streams, how many downloads, what's my numbers look like. When in reality, if you take the mentality of, I helped somebody today, that's as much gratification as I need. All the numbers in the world doesn't make a difference to me.
Yeah, I'll second that. This is sidebar. So I the numbers, right? Like we get so wrapped up in some. I haven't launched a podcast yet, so I think you're talking me out of it. It's been on my list. It's coming. It's coming. Full disclosure, Angel has offered to help me with mine as well. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. I'm still working on it. But from a social media perspective, we get so wrapped up in the numbers. You know, how many views did this hit? How many likes? How many comments? What kind of response to the call to action? All those things. And really, for me, within the last 4 to 5 months, I've just shifted to, like, I just want to have conversations with people. And if that conversation is in the form of me sharing a 30 to 45-second video, if nobody sees, if nobody engages with it, somebody saw it. And if it helped one person, and this is a pretty cool 360 God moment for me. My 17-year-old kid just texted me last week, and he's like, "Hey, can I get 2 signed copies of your books? My friends have watched a couple of your videos, and they really want one of your books." I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, cool."
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how many people see it; the right people are seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good
So
stuff.
don't get caught up in the numbers. It's so easy to do.
Yeah, my favorite thing in the world is is getting those messages direct to me from people that I know that,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
man, I really like what you're doing. I really like what you're doing. And I even had one like, when are we getting a t-shirt? I'm like, hold up there, buddy. We're a long way from a t-shirt.
That's funny because I'm working on merch now.
Yeah, yeah. It's not
Yeah.
like I don't want to do it, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like, am I pulling the trigger a little too soon?
And you will likely always feel like that.
Yeah.
I had a very, very established podcaster that we had on the show, and he said that. He said, you're always gonna have that self-doubt and that self-preservation to say this is too soon, or nobody will buy it, or nobody will enjoy it, or nobody's gonna listen. You're always gonna have that piece of self-doubt. And I think part of the biggest task in doing something this, and I'm not saying we're large, but the task is large, right? Anytime you're, as you referenced, climbing that number 2 mountain, the track up has some bumps to it. And then, has some times you look up and go, I'll never make it to the top. And, we had Nurse Gwenny on. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's a very large creator. And she made the reference that, and she used the movie Frozen 2. She said, you just have to do you have to be looking to do the next right thing. And, as you do the next right thing, that big goal gets a little bit closer and seems a little bit smaller. And I just took that to heart so much. I mean, she just poured into me over that episode. I mean, and anybody listening knows we do the scripts, and I took the script and literally closed the tab on my computer and said, I'm just going to listen to you.
Yeah.
And it was just that type of podcast where she just poured into me just as much as she did anybody that was listening. So yeah, you'll have those. I hate that Michaela's not here because she signs off every show, and she's got this she calls it her Delilah voice. I don't know if you remember the radio host Delilah that used to do the night shows on all the major, radio networks. But she's got this Delilah voice, and we pick with her that my credit card gets charged $1.99 every time she does it. But as we end, you guys always know that I give us a shameless plug as well. We completely revamped our website this week, so go check it out, asilentwarwithin.com. You can find everything there. There's a lot of things in the works. There's a lot of exciting things happening. We've added Jason to our team. Our social medias are running strong. I think even though we say don't get wrapped up in the numbers, it's always really impressive when you have a video that goes to 50, 60,000 views and has good likes and all that stuff. So we do enjoy that, even though we don't get wrapped up in it. So you guys can find us on all those social media platforms, and you can listen to us. We put out a new episode every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and a few other smaller platforms that just naturally get that dump from Riverside when they do our hosting for us. So we're appreciative to both Riverside. We're appreciative to Jason and Jason Bohler for joining us. Thank you so much. And as Michaela always says, be safe, take care of your mind, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.